What makes 7 men from South Korea the first call for the United Nations, the White House, the Grammys, and the world's biggest luxury houses all at once? Why do global institutions fight to get BTS on their stage? It's not just fame. It's not just numbers. There's a calculated reason behind every single invitation. And once you see it, you'll never look at them the same way again.
Number 7. The Festival King who rewrote history, J-Hope. When Lollapalooza announced its 2022 lineup, one name sent shockwaves through the entire American music festival circuit, Jungkook, known to the world as J-Hope. On July 31st, 2022, he stepped onto the main stage at Grant Park in Chicago and did something no South Korean solo artist had ever done before. He headlined one of the biggest and most legendary music festivals in the United States. Lollapalooza isn't some niche event. Founded by Perry Farrell of Jane's Addiction in 1991, it's a cultural institution that has hosted Radiohead, Metallica, Paul McCartney, and Beyoncé. For the organizers to hand that top billing to a Korean solo act, they needed certainty. Certainty that he could fill that field and deliver a show worthy of the legacy. J-Hope didn't just meet that standard, he crushed it. Over 100,000 people showed up across his performance weekend, and his headline set became one of the most watched festival moments of the entire year. He performed tracks from his album Jack in the Box, which had just dropped weeks earlier and debuted on the Billboard 200, proving that his solo artistry wasn't riding on the BTS name alone, it was standing on its own legs. But here's the part most people miss. Lollapalooza didn't pick J-Hope because he was famous. They picked him because he represented a shift they couldn't ignore. The festival industry had been watching the data for years. Korean pop acts were drawing numbers that rivaled legacy rock and hip-hop headliners. J-Hope was the proof of concept. His stage presence, built from years of being BTS's lead dancer and performance anchor, translated perfectly to the raw, high-energy environment of an outdoor festival. He wasn't performing in a controlled K-pop concert setting with synchronized fan light sticks. He was standing in front of a general American festival crowd, people who came for Metallica and Dua Lipa, and he made them stay. That's not popularity, that's artistic authority. And the fashion world noticed too. Louis Vuitton named J-Hope as a brand ambassador, and he became a front-row fixture at Paris Fashion Week, sitting alongside the biggest names in the luxury industry. When he attended the Louis Vuitton men's fall-winter show, photographers swarmed him the way they would a Hollywood A-lister, because in that world, he already was one. His collaboration with American rapper J. Cole on the Street in March 2023 further cemented his position as a global bridge builder, an artist respected not just by pop audiences, but by hip-hop purists who don't hand out collaborations casually. J. Cole personally agreed to the track, a signal of genuine musical respect that no marketing budget can manufacture. J-Hope proved one thing that every event organizer now understands, but he's still only number 7, which means the names ahead of him pulled off something even bigger.
Number 6. The man the Olympics and Coldplay both wanted, Jin. In July 2024, the world watched as the Olympic flame made its way through the streets of Paris ahead of the 2024 Summer Games. And holding that torch was Kim Seok-jin, the eldest member of BTS. He had just completed his mandatory military service in the Republic of Korea, returning to public life, not with a concert or a press tour, but with one of the most symbolic honors any individual can receive in the global sporting world. The International Olympic Committee and the Paris 2024 organizing team don't hand the torch to entertainers for clout. The torch relay is a carefully curated procession of individuals who represent excellence, cultural impact, and values that align with the Olympic spirit. Athletes, humanitarians, scientists, and leaders make up that list. For a K-pop idol to be standing among them, running through the streets of Paris with the flame that traces its origins to ancient Olympia, that says something that no album sale or streaming number ever could. But the Olympics weren't the first global institution to recognize what Jin brings to a stage. In October 2022, just weeks before he became the first BTS member to begin military enlistment, Jin flew to Buenos Aires, Argentina to perform alongside Coldplay at the legendary Estadio River Plate. That venue holds over 70,000 people, and it was packed. Chris Martin didn't just invite Jin as a guest, he co-wrote The Astronaut with him, a track that became Jin's solo single and debuted in the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100. During the live performance, Jin stood in front of a South American crowd that knew every word, singing a song that Coldplay's own members helped craft specifically for his voice. That's not a feature, that's not a cameo. That's one of the biggest bands in the history of modern music saying this man belongs on our stage. The emotional weight of that night was impossible to miss. Everyone in that stadium knew Jin was about to disappear from public life for 18 months of military duty. Coldplay knew it, Jin knew it, the fans knew it. And yet the performance was flawless, controlled, powerful, and delivered with the kind of calm authority that only comes from someone who has spent a decade performing at the highest level. What makes Jin's position in the global event landscape unique is that he operates on pure presence. He's not the member known for producing, or for rap, or for choreography that breaks the internet. He's the one who walks into a room and commands it, without raising his voice. Event organizers understand that quality. The Paris Olympics needed someone who could carry the weight of the flame with dignity and global recognition. Jin delivered exactly that. Coldplay needed someone whose voice could hold its own inside a stadium built for football legends. Jin delivered exactly that. And this is what separates being famous from being chosen. Fame gets you invited to events. Being chosen means the event itself becomes bigger because you're there. And if Jin is only number 6, imagine what the members above him brought to the table.
Number 5, the producer they all come looking for, Suga. In the music industry, there's a clear hierarchy that separates performers from creators. Performers fill stages. Creators fill the stages of other performers too. Min Yoongi, Suga of BTS, also known as August D, sits firmly on the creator side of that line. And that's exactly why the global music industry doesn't treat him like a pop idol. They treat him like a peer. When Halsey released her critically acclaimed album Manic in 2020, she didn't just feature Suga as a vocalist on Suga's interlude. She brought him in as a producer. Halsey had the entire Western music industry at her disposal. She could have called any hitmaker in Los Angeles or London. She chose a man from Daegu, South Korea, because she recognized that his production sensibility was something she couldn't get anywhere else. That collaboration wasn't arranged by a label looking for cross-market synergy. Halsey personally reached out because she respected his craft. Then came Juice WRLD. The late American rapper, one of the most influential voices in modern hip-hop, had a posthumous track called Girl of My Dreams released in 2021 on his album Fighting Demons, and Suga was on it. For a Korean artist to appear on the posthumous album of an American hip-hop icon, approved by the artist's estate, that's not a commercial decision. That's a statement of artistic legitimacy that crosses every cultural and genre boundary the industry has ever built. And when Psy, the man behind Gangnam Style, the first YouTube video to ever hit 1 billion views, needed a producer for his comeback single That in 2022, he went straight to Suga. Psy had access to every top producer in Korea and beyond. He chose Suga, and the result was a track that dominated charts across Asia and proved that Suga's production instincts are genre-proof. He produced for a pop star, a hip-hop legend, and a cultural phenomenon, and every single track sounded exactly right. But what truly shocked the global music market was his solo move. In April 2023, Suga released D-Day under his August D moniker, the final chapter of a trilogy he had been building since 2016. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, making it one of the highest-charting albums by any Korean solo artist in history. And then he took it on the road. The August D-Day World Tour sold out arenas across the United States, Asia, and beyond.
Major venues, the kind that typically host legacy rock bands and top-tier pop stars, were packed with fans who came specifically for a Korean rapper-producer performing tracks built on raw lyricism and self-produced beats. No elaborate K-pop choreography, no flashy ensemble cast, just one man, his music, and a stage presence forged from years of being the quiet engine behind BTS's most critically praised work. This is why prestigious events and global artists keep coming to Suga. He's not just a performer you book for visibility, he's a creator who elevates the project itself. Every collaboration he touches gains credibility, and every stage he stands on gains artistic weight. And yet, he's only number 5, because the names above him made even bigger rooms go silent.
Number 4, the voice that opened the biggest stage on Earth, Jungkook. On November 20th, 2022, an estimated 2 billion people across the planet tuned in to watch the opening ceremony of the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. That's not a typo. 2 billion. The World Cup opening ceremony is the single most watched live event in global sports. Bigger than the Super Bowl, bigger than the Olympics opening, bigger than anything television has ever consistently delivered. And when the Al Bayt Stadium in Al Khor lit up to kick off the tournament, the performer standing at the center of that stage was Jungkook. He performed Dreamers, the official FIFA World Cup anthem he recorded alongside Qatari singer Fahad Al-Kubaisi. The song was commissioned directly by FIFA, the governing body of world football, as the sonic identity of the entire tournament. To understand the weight of that selection, look at who came before him. Shakira performed at the 2010 and 2014 World Cup ceremonies. Jennifer Lopez and Pitbull took the stage in 2014. Ricky Martin owned the 1998 edition. These are artists with decades of crossover dominance and billions of cumulative record sales. For FIFA to place a 25-year-old Korean artist in that same lineage wasn't a gamble. It was a recognition that Jungkook's reach had become genuinely planetary. And he didn't just sing, he performed across the entire stadium floor with the confidence of someone who had been training for exactly this moment his entire life, which, in a very real sense, he had. Jungkook joined BTS as a trainee at the age of 15 and spent nearly a decade performing on stages that grew exponentially larger every single year. By the time FIFA called, he wasn't nervous, he was ready. The Dreamers performance trended globally on every major social media platform within minutes of broadcast. The song itself charted in over 100 countries on Spotify, and the official music video surpassed hundreds of millions of views. FIFA didn't just get a performer, they got a global amplifier that turned their opening ceremony into a cultural event that transcended sports. But Jungkook wasn't finished proving the scope of his individual power. In July 2023, he released 7, featuring American rapper Lotto, and it debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Not number 5, not number 10, number 1 on the first week. He became the first Korean solo artist in history to enter the Billboard Hot 100 at the top position. That record wasn't achieved through bundled sales or algorithmic tricks. It was pure, verified first-week streaming and sales numbers that outpaced every other release in America that week. His debut solo album, Golden, released in November 2023, reinforced what the World Cup had already announced to the world. Jungkook, as an individual artist, operates at a scale that most performers never reach, even with an entire group behind them. Calvin Klein understood this too, naming him their global brand ambassador, and his campaign imagery generated more social media engagement than virtually any fashion campaign in the brand's history. When an organization as massive as FIFA looks at every artist on the planet and decides that one person will represent the sound of their crown jewel event, that's not marketing, that's a verdict. And somehow, Jungkook is still only number 4, because the 3 names above him hold positions that even a World Cup stage can't match. Number 3, the face that conquered the fashion capital of the world, V. When Kim Tae-young, V of BTS, walked into his first Celine show at Paris Fashion Week, something happened that the fashion industry hadn't seen from a Korean artist at that scale before. The crowd outside the venue wasn't just large, it was unmanageable. Hundreds of fans and photographers lined the streets, creating scenes that veteran fashion journalists compared to the arrivals of Hollywood's biggest names. But V wasn't there as a guest. He was there as Celine's global ambassador, personally appointed by Hedi Slimane, one of the most influential and notoriously selective creative directors in the history of luxury fashion. Slimane doesn't pick ambassadors based on follower counts. His entire career has been built on an uncompromising aesthetic vision, from his era-defining work at Dior Homme to his transformation of Saint Laurent and eventually Celine. When Slimane looks at a face, he sees architecture. When he chose V, he was declaring that this man's visual presence aligned with the artistic standard he had spent decades building. That endorsement alone carries more weight in the fashion world than 100 magazine covers. And V delivered on it with an ease that made the fashion press take serious notice. At every Celine show he attended during Paris Fashion Week, V didn't just sit front row, he became the story. Fashion outlets from Vogue to GQ to Elle covered his outfits, his presence, and his interactions with other industry figures. Social media engagement for Celine's official accounts surged measurably during the periods surrounding V's appearances. The brand wasn't just getting an ambassador, they were getting a cultural amplifier whose influence on consumer interest was immediate and trackable. But what sets V apart from other celebrity brand partnerships is that his relationship with fashion isn't manufactured. Long before any luxury house came calling, V was already known within BTS fandom and Korean entertainment circles for his distinctive personal style, a blend of vintage aesthetics, oversized silhouettes, and unexpected layering that didn't follow any trend cycle. He wore what he wanted, how he wanted, and the consistency of that personal identity is precisely what attracted a perfectionist like Slimane. The fashion industry can spot the difference between someone who wears clothes and someone who inhabits them, and V falls unmistakably into the second category. His solo music reinforced this visual identity. When Layover dropped in September 2023, it debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200. The album's aesthetic, from the cover art to the music videos for tracks like Slow Dancing and Rainy Days, was drenched in a cinematic, melancholic visual language that felt more like an art film than a pop release. Every frame looked curated. Every shot felt intentional. That artistic sensibility is exactly what makes V the member that fashion institutions, luxury events, and visual-driven global platforms want most. He doesn't just attend prestigious events, he elevates the visual story those events are trying to tell. When Paris Fashion Week puts V in the front row, the photographs that come out of that room look better. The editorial coverage feels sharper. The cultural conversation grows wider. That's not influence through volume, that's influence through taste, and the fashion world knows the difference. Yet V holds only the number 3 spot because the 2 names above him were summoned by stages where fashion is the smallest part of the equation.
Number 2. The man who made 2 luxury empires bet everything on one name. Jimin. There's an unwritten rule in the luxury fashion industry. The biggest houses don't share. When Dior names you global ambassador, the expectation is that your public identity becomes synonymous with Dior. When Tiffany's & Co. claims you, your wrist, your neck, your image belongs to Tiffany's. These are trillion-dollar brand ecosystems with more than a century of heritage each, and they protect their ambassadors with the possessiveness of empires guarding territory. So when both Dior and Tiffany's & Co. wanted Park Jimin and got him, the fashion industry understood that something unprecedented was happening. Dior moved first. Creative director Kim Jones personally selected Jimin as Dior's global ambassador, making him the first Korean artist to hold that title for the house. This wasn't a regional deal limited to Asian markets. This was global. Jimin's face appeared in Dior campaigns distributed across Europe, North America, the Middle East, and Asia simultaneously. When he attended Dior's shows at Paris Fashion Week, the media coverage didn't just spike, it dominated. Fashion editors from the world's leading publications covered his outfits, his arrivals, and his front-row presence with the intensity usually reserved for A-list Hollywood or European royalty. Industry analysts documented what they called the Jimin effect. Items he wore sold out within hours, and online search traffic for Dior surged measurably in every market where his ambassador content was distributed. Then, Tiffany's & Co. entered the picture, naming Jimin their global ambassador as well.
Tiffany's, a brand founded in 1837, carrying nearly 2 centuries of American luxury heritage, the house of Audrey Hepburn's most iconic film association, looked at the entire landscape of global celebrity and decided that Jimin was the individual who best represented their brand to the modern world. Holding dual global ambassadorships of that caliber is extraordinarily rare. Most artists are contractually and strategically locked into one house. Jimin carried 2 of the most prestigious names in luxury simultaneously, and neither brand felt diminished by sharing him. That alone tells you the level of demand his presence commands. But Jimin's dominance at prestigious global events isn't built on fashion alone. In March 2023, he released his debut solo album, Face, and the lead single, Like Crazy, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making him the first Korean solo artist in history to reach the top of America's most definitive music chart. That achievement wasn't a technicality or a result of bundled promotions. It was first week's streaming and sales numbers that outperformed every other artist in the American market that week. He followed it up with his second solo album, Muse, in July 2024, led by the single Who, which once again dominated global charts and proved that his first #1 wasn't a fluke, it was a standard. What makes Jimin the ultimate choice for prestigious global events is the combination. He's not just a fashion icon that luxury houses fight over. He's not just a recording artist who topped the most competitive chart in the world. He's both at the same time, operating at the peak of both industries, without one diminishing the other. Event organizers, brand strategists, and creative directors all understand the same thing. Putting Jimin in your room guarantees that the room becomes the most talked about room in the world that day. And yet there's still one name above him, because #1 was invited to a stage where the entire planet was the audience, and the stakes went far beyond music or fashion.
#1. The voice that spoke where world leaders stand. RM. On September 24, 2018, a 24-year-old rapper from Ilsan, South Korea, stood behind the podium at the United Nations General Assembly in New York City, the same podium where presidents, prime ministers, and heads of state deliver addresses that shape global policy. The same hall where the future of nations is debated, where wars are condemned, and where the most powerful people on the planet speak to the world. And behind that podium stood Kim Namjoon, RM of BTS, delivering a speech on behalf of UNICEF's Generation Unlimited initiative that would become one of the most watched UN addresses of the entire decade. He didn't read corporate talking points, he told his own story. He spoke about a boy from a small Korean city who lost himself trying to meet the expectations of others and had to learn, painfully, how to love who he actually was. And then he delivered a line that ricocheted across every continent. No matter who you are, where you're from, your skin color, your gender identity, speak yourself. That wasn't a lyric, that was a statement made inside the United Nations, broadcast to the entire world, from a man the global institution trusted enough to give that platform. And the UN didn't ask once, they asked again and again. In 2020, BTS addressed the 75th UN General Assembly during the height of the global pandemic, with RM leading the group's message of resilience to a world in crisis. In 2021, the stakes went even higher. South Korean President Moon Jae-in appointed all 7 BTS members as special presidential envoys for future generations and culture, a title that came with diplomatic passports issued by the Republic of Korea. At the 76th UN General Assembly, RM once again led the address, speaking about climate change, vaccines, and the choices facing an entire generation. They performed Permission to Dance in a pre-recorded segment filmed inside the UN General Assembly Hall itself, the first musical performance ever staged in that room for a General Assembly session. Then, in June 2022, RM walked into the White House. BTS met with President Joe Biden to discuss anti-Asian hate crimes and inclusion, a meeting that RM navigated in fluent English, a language he famously taught himself largely by watching the American television series Friends.
The White House didn't invite BTS for entertainment. They invited them because RM and his group had become legitimate voices in the global conversation about discrimination and youth empowerment, and ignoring that influence would have been a political miscalculation. What makes RM the undisputed #1 on this list is the nature of the stages he was called to. J-Hope conquered the festival world, Jin carried the Olympic flame, Suga earned the music industry's deepest respect, Jungkook performed for 2 billion people at the World Cup, V became the fashion world's most wanted face, Jimin made luxury empires compete for his name, but RM was invited to stand where the leaders of the free world stand, and when he spoke, they listened. Not because he's famous, because what he had to say mattered. That is why BTS members are always the top choice at prestigious global events. It was never just about the music, it was always about what they represent. And no one represents it louder than the man who spoke to the entire world and told them to speak for themselves.
7 men, 7 different stages. The United Nations, the FIFA World Cup, the Olympic torch relay, Lollapalooza, Paris Fashion Week, Dior, Celine, Tiffany, Coldplay, the White House. Every single one of these institutions looked at the entire planet and made the same decision. They chose BTS. Not because the industry told them to, because the world already had. And that's the difference between being popular and being permanent. These 7 didn't just show up at prestigious events. They became the reason those events trended worldwide. They turned fashion shows into global headlines, diplomatic stages into viral moments, and stadium ceremonies into cultural turning points that billions of people will remember for decades. So the next time someone asks why BTS keeps getting invited to the biggest rooms on Earth, show them this video. The facts speak loud enough. If this breakdown gave you a new perspective, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because this channel doesn't do opinions, we do receipts. Drop a comment and tell us which member's moment hit you the hardest. We'll see you in the next one.